Hello, and welcome to The Alt Left.
Welcome back, everybody, to episode 40 of The Alt Left. I am your host, Chris. With me this week is no special guest, just my two favorite special people, Matthew Jumbo Johnson.
Hello, everybody.
And the good Reverend Dr. K.
Good evening, everyone. This is a special episode. Our illustrious host here is now missing an organ.
Yep.
I am, but the piano mover said he'll be back soon.
Yeah, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. Our illustrious host, Chris, is now probably about a good couple pounds lighter. Lost his
No.
Several ounces.
Several ounces.
Yeah, but it was full of stones. So it's that,
I'm just saying, I didn't lose a limb. I lost a gallbladder.
Yeah, but it was a big gallbladder. Like everything
Trust
on
me,
you, it wasn't
lose
tiny.
it. They took it from you.
Yeah,
there was no loss.
I didn't get it back. It's messed up.
Yeah, it is.
But,
you didn't ask for it back, did you?
My gallbladder exploded. 0 stars. Do not recommend. Would not try again. Luckily, I'm out of gallbladders, so I'm good to go.
Although the morphine I hear is very nice.
The morphine was quite comforting. It was like I never had morphine before. I've had surgery once before, and they gave me Dilaudid, which I actually preferred because, man, does that get you high. But they gave me a lot of morphine this time, and it just felt like someone put a weighted blanket on your skeleton, which wasn't terrible. I didn't dislike the morphine.
No, it doesn't take the pain away as much as it just makes you not give a fuck.
It just doesn't. The pain doesn't ruin your day anymore.
No, not even a little.
Of course not, because you're on morphine.
But I gotta say, in terms of this podcast, I was pleasantly surprised. You know, I've been dealing with gallbladder issues for the better part of a year now, and I don't have health insurance, and so I've actually been avoiding dealing with that because, you know, there's a comma and a bunch of numbers in front of that comma in dealing with that if you don't have health insurance.
Oh, you didn't want to go into massive crippling debt just to, be healthy? How un-American of you.
Yeah, my 3 day, two day. How long was I in there? I don't know. I was on a lot of drugs. You guys visited me.
You were there about 2 days. Yeah, so, no, 3 days. It was 3 days. It was 3 days.
No, it was 2.
I think it was 2 nights, 3 days. I think that's what it comes down to.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, I was in there for a couple of days, and that alone is going to be in the high 5 to early 6 figures. And so that's why I didn't want to go. And so I eventually went because, after 6 hours of excruciating pain and starting to go jaundiced, it was, that or die. So I chose that. And I went in.
His
and
girlfriend
I gotta
made
tell
him is what it really comes down to.
Yeah. That's true. But the system actually worked for once. I was very pleasantly surprised. As soon as I went to the hospital, they asked me if I had insurance. I said, no, I'm poor and have no insurance. And they immediately said, well, if you have no insurance, we automatically knock the bill down 90%. Which, makes sense because hospitals have to overbill because insurance is underpay, and it's this vicious, awful cycle.
So they made it cost what it actually should cost.
Yes, which is
Got
great.
It. Okay.
And then while I'm in a hospital bed getting drugs pumped into me after I had an ultrasound, a social worker came up and basically gave me a bunch of forms to fill out to get Medi-Cal to have them cover a majority of the remainder. And
Hooray, Medi-Cal.
Now, great. Now, this only happens because we're in California. We're going to be discussing later about some of the problems we have with different states, because when you leave states up to this, sometimes you have great places like California, Hawaii, Washington that actually give a shit about their residents and will establish some kind of basic social safety net to stop people from dying less. And then you have states like Texas, Florida, most of Dumbfuckistan, and in that Bible Belt. And they don't care if you live or die. And they make decisions based on faith and nonsense.
Unless you're an unborn fetus, in which case they care about you deeply.
Only
the
second
you're out.
Yeah.
Until the second you're born, in which case they no longer give a fuck about you.
Once the wizard's out from the curtain, Dorothy's fucking out of there.
Yep.
But yeah, so I'm pleasantly surprised, and this goes back to, again, something we're going to talk about today, is how sad is it that in some states you are sentenced to death or not have any constitutional rights over your own body, and in some states you're actually fucking taken care of, and it shouldn't matter what zip code you live in as a citizen of the country as to whether or not you're entitled to that level of safety.
Great.
Preach, brother, preach.
So while I was in the hospital, one of the reasons I made sure I want to get out of there as soon as possible, while I was in there, about 2 hours after I was admitted, they were turning away ambulances again because they're overstacked, because people won't take their goddamn COVID shots.
Nope.
Yeah. And instead of taking their COVID shots, they're taking ivermectin.
Nay. Say it so.
Now, when I first heard that people were taking ivermectin for COVID treatment, because it's not preventative, it's supposed to be treatment.
Yeah.
I was flabbergasted, and I was flabbergasted because I actually know what ivermectin is for.
I got to tell you, I don't know what I mean, I do now because now it's been in the news, but I actually didn't know the first time I heard about ivermectin, which was, I don't know, 6 months ago, 8 months ago. And I've heard about it from several people who are saying, well, they're covering up that ivermectin works and blah, blah. And I got to tell you, I never heard of it. So I didn't even, it's worse than I thought it was because I just assumed it was some Dr. Oz
worse.
quackery. Not that it's actually fucking horse paste. And so... But I knew it was bullshit, and the reason I knew it was bullshit is because someone like Kay didn't talk to me about it. Not a doctor talked to me about it. No one with a third grade level of science education talking about it. It's always these libertarian or Republican nut jobs who won't wear a mask, who always come and talk to you about ivermectin. Would you say that's a good?
I would say that is a fair assessment.
Now, for the record, there is a human variation of it, but it's a dewormer. That's what it's mainly used for, is a horse dewormer.
Well, okay, yeah, is in its
gotta get them COVID worms out.
In its most common usage, it is a livestock or pet dewormer. Okay, it kills worms in the gut or heartworms in the heart of animals. Okay, it comes from a type of drug called ivermectin. Which originally was found or was discovered or formulated by a Japanese guy in 1978. And ever since then, we've been using ivermectin, which is a type of ivermectin, to treat livestock. And then somewhere in like the somewhere in the past, between then and now, there is a human use for this, which is a different formulation of this ivermectin, which is also called ivermectin. And this ivermectin in humans is used once again for gut parasites, and it also helps to treat like head lice. Okay, so there are legitimate uses of it, and doctors here have been prescribing it for decades. But it's very low dose. It has never had any use other than that. And it was one doctor basically in Egypt that started using it, claimed 90% reduction in COVID symptoms and much better outcomes of patients. And then he self-published in his own medical journal his quote-unquote study. And once everybody actually got a hold of it and started reading it, they basically destroyed him over it, which they should have, because it was complete bullshit. And the article itself, or the paper itself, was found to have like massive amounts of plagiarism and inconsistencies and all kinds of like p-hacking and stuff like that. It was
so not real science, just a lot of horsing around.
Exactly. I love that.
Put you in the penitentiary.
Puns, my favorite.
But it's getting bad. Like, it's actually, people are now starting, hospitals and ERs in Oklahoma are getting overcrowded because they're having to deal with ivermectin overdoses now.
Yeah, because
in addition to COVID,
because people are using the ivermectin that's meant for livestock or animals on themselves, and they're not just giving like one dose, they're giving multiple doses over long periods of time, and they're harming themselves greatly.
Now, are we seeing a difference in people who are covering this for payment? Like, I mean, obviously, if you're running through Blue Cross or one of those, these big names are not going to let. What if you're with like farmers insurance or something like that? Is that covered more, or is that still dissuaded?
I hate you so much. And the reason why he's making fun is because obviously this is one of those situations where there's no need for people to hurt themselves with these drugs. It just isn't necessary at all.
But at least with the ivermectin thing, unlike COVID, people dying of ivermectin, only the bad people are dying.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, until they start clogging up ERs and preventing actual care to people that are legitimately sick.
That's That's fair. I was in a gurney in the hallway for 2 hours.
Yeah,
That's fair.
normally I'm 100% with you on this, and I'm just gonna be the first one to be like, okay, let the Darwin Awards commence. But like when they're actually causing harm to real people that legitimately need health care because like the ERs are clogged up because their dumbasses OD'd. Fuck
The
them.
problem is that's not what the problem is these people are not just people that don't have health care. These are people that are predominantly anti-vaxxers, predominantly people that are COVID deniers. And then they're going out and saying, well, if I get COVID, I'm just going to take ivermectin. And it's like, it's not the same, first of all.
Well, no, I
We've
agree.
seen a
Look,
massive
yeah.
uptick in doctors prescribing ivermectin, like an astronomical amount of prescriptions written for it, when previously, we would see a handful.
Well, yeah, I mean, stupidity isn't limited to just yokels and idiots. Like, there's
So
doctors that are morons. There's lawyers
Oh,
that are
yeah.
morons. There's you can have what would normally be perceived as a job that requires intelligence and still be an idiot. Trump
Yeah.
had attorneys defending him. You've got your doctors that are super religious and will still use leeches. Like you've got all kinds of crazies out there.
Well, and there is some good pushback, at least. Again, this is a minority story here. But something I'm liking is recently Delta has announced people who are on their health insurance policy who did not get the vaccine are being charged an extra $200 a month for their health insurance rates.
Good.
The bigger companies, especially now, are pushing back. They're mandating their employees get vaccinated, or they're not paying them. They're making them go home without pay and things like that.
And yet, we're not requiring this in schools. Like when I was a kid going to school, my parents had to provide a vaccination record for me to be admitted. And yet somehow COVID, which is a bigger problem than polio, is not being required. I mean, I know Texas was one of them, but there was somewhere else too where they were writing laws that basically you don't have to that basically parents have no obligation to report COVID sickness to the schools and can send their kids, and even after a positive test will face no liability if they send their kids to school.
Yeah, which to me is absolute insanity.
Yeah,
100%. I mean, Texas and
these are the
Florida are
laws
in a
they're
race
passing
right now to see who can be the shittier state. So,
Yeah.
it
But
doesn't
we
surprise me at
are
all.
missing a prime point of unity here. Okay, there is some Joe Biden unity we could have with this one, because whether or not you have right wing nut jobs taking horse paste, or you have left wing rave kids taking ketamine, we can unite on horse medicine's rad.
Once again, I hate you.
Sorry, we can put this one out to pasture. I apologize.
At the base of all of this, it just makes me sad that these kinds of things gain so much traction, and then when they are shown to just continue to hurt people and hurt people and hurt people, people continue to ignore it, and they're doing it to themselves. That's the part that kills me. Beyond the conspiracy theories and all that other stuff, it's like you're injecting something into your body and then espousing that the other thing that actually can make you safe is dangerous. Doesn't make any sense to me.
I agree 100%.
I mean,
One
petition
thing I
to
will
people
say-
who are COVID victims who took ivermectin in the South. Can we just refer to them as Tennessee walkers?
Yeah, I'm in.
Might as well. But on the plus side of this, because publicly so many people who have been anti-vax and have been like the face of the COVID vaccine anti-vax movement are now catching COVID and dying from it. We are starting to see massive spikes in people getting vaccinated. I just found out yesterday, California is now 80% of the population has had at least one dose.
Yep.
And so, and again, we've always been on the higher end as far as the states go.
And I know this sounds shitty, but just shut the goddamn borders. Like literally, we should just stop travel.
I'm
Agreed.
in.
Yeah, there's massive spikes nationally about people getting it. It's I worry that it's too little too late.
Yes, this is going endemic. Like COVID is going to be here forever. We fucked it up. We missed the window. This is like global warming. Like this idea that we can come out at the end. No, we've missed it.
Just like the flu, we're going to deal with a new COVID strain every year, and we're going to have to get a new vaccination every single year.
That's right. We lost the fight against it, and it's way worse than the common flu.
Yep.
It's way worse than the common flu because of people that are long haulers. There's a small percentage of people that get sick, they don't die, but they have irreparable damage that's done to themselves just by, being sick, and they
Yeah.
continue to be sick.
But seriously, this is a willful neglect of reality, and that's all it is. It's they are not living in a reality; they're living in a bubble of their own feelings. And just like everything right-wing nut jobs do, it is simply about making themselves feel better, like the little snowflakes they are, and nothing to do with giving a shit about anybody else around them or the consequences of other human beings.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know what? I am not wishing Joe Rogan dies, but I'm not going to be sad at all.
At all. Joe Rogan. Oh, fuck.
That guy drives me fucking crazy, and he always has, because he is such a nut job.
He is the epitome of pseudo-intellectual douchebaggery. That is what he is. And
That's Elon Musk, but he's definitely a lieutenant.
He plays himself off as he's so much smarter than he actually is.
I'm just asking questions, man. What do you mean? I'm just asking questions.
He is a walking human example of the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Yep.
Yes.
100%.
Absolutely. And if you don't know what the Dunning-Kruger effect is, go look it up.
Yes.
I'm not going to explain it to you.
I will in 10 seconds. The Dunning-Kruger effect is a very well done and famous study. You can look it up. Look up the details. Basically, the less you know about something, the more confident you will be that you know about it. Actual educated experts tend to underestimate their abilities of knowledge, whereas the more ignorant you are, the more you will overestimate it. And that's Joe Rogan to a T.
And to simplify it even further, essentially it means you're too stupid to know that you're stupid.
Yes. So look it up. It's a good one. But as soon as you read it, you'll be like, oh, yeah, that's fucking Joe Rogan, Donald Trump. It's all these guys. Yeah, and that's exactly what it is. These people who really think that they are these intellectual powerhouses because they have learned three things. And that's it. And again, you know what? No tears. He's getting exactly what he deserves. The only thing I am sad about with Joe Rogan is that he is going to receive expert care.
He's already receiving it. And by the way, ivermectin was on that list. He took it on his own, but he's also getting the cocktail that Trump got. Like that is on the list of things that he's getting.
And all the governors who are anti-maskers are getting.
He's got a giant fucking pocketbook, and he can buy the best treatment money that literally money can buy.
Yeah, but this is why it's especially insidious. Joe Rogan has spent the last year or more undermining legitimate scientific studies, undermining vaccines, undermining the healthcare industry, doing anything he can to spoon feed his listeners the feel good, douchebaggery bullshit that they like. And now the moment he gets COVID and he's a victim of his own stupidity, he immediately turns to science and milks it for all it's worth.
And then he'll come back and say, see, guys, I told you I'm fine. Look at me. I'm back. Yeah. I'm good. Yep. COVID's no big deal. It's no worse than the flu. And
then the confirmation bias continues, and it's just this vicious cycle. And every one of his dumb listeners will point to him as an example while forgetting every other example that fucking died from it regardless.
And forgetting every consequence. Like, again, look at Candace Owens, who is suffering the consequences of her actions. We actually had a chat with this. A few of our listeners we would talk with them on Discord, and we actually had a discussion about this where they were saying, well, look, I think Candace Owens is a piece of
Let's give the quick breakdown of what happened with Candace Owens. Not everyone might know about it. So just a real Cliff's note. So recently, Candace Owens suspected she might have COVID and went to go get a test. And apparently she went to go get a test at a private testing facility. They saw who it was and wrote her a formal letter saying, we're denying you service because you're a piece. They didn't use these words. They were very professional.
They actually specifically said it would be a disservice to the community and everyone who has worked here and done all this effort and work and risk to allow you to be served by us.
They were very professional. I would have just said you're a piece of shit that's promoting conspiracy theories. Which is essentially what they said, but they did it in a very professional, non-cussy way. But that's long and the short of what happened. There's not much known beyond that. It has been confirmed that the letter is legit. Candace Owens has been raging about it. And they did also in the letter, just so you guys know, recommend the other facility in the area. There's only one other, and it's not exactly.
And make sure to brag about how, their results are spotty. They mail them into Texas, and you have to go in through the back alley. I like how they wrote that in the letter.
Yeah.
And again, but the internet and people are she was hoping to get this outrage, and most people are against her on this and saying, sucks to be you. And that leaves up that question of when is it okay to deny services to, especially, and again, remember, we're not talking about gay wedding cakes. This is COVID testing. This is serious business. And I disagree with most liberals on this issue,
Same.
but I see their point is this is a life-saving, important medical scientific procedure, and you should not be denying that to people based on views or actions or blah, blah, blah. And there's merit to that. Again, just like people are talking about, we'll talk about that in a minute, about packing courts, that kind of thing. There's times to get dirty and there's times to not. But something I want to point out, Candace Owens is a nationalist. She's a white nationalist. She's a Nazi minus the kraut. That's all it is.
No, but Chris, no, that's not possible because she's a black woman, so she can't possibly be a white nationalist.
Well, you can take ivermectin without being a horse. And there are Uncle Toms in every single category. You don't have to be white to promote white nationalism.
Yep. Every group of oppressors has a collaborator.
Absolutely. And that's what she is. She's a collaborator towards white nationalism and fascism. It's exactly what she is. And that's what she promotes. And she has contributed to the death and misery of innocent people through her fucking nincompoopery. And I don't care about her getting treatment. It's not just, well, I'm okay with her not getting treatment. No, like, I mean, from a legal and civil rights perspective, again, I'm not a progressive. I'm a communist, and I advocate for the death of fascists. And when someone is endangering the national welfare due to white nationalism, no. And again, well, there's civil liberties and rights. It's like, yeah, and again, you have a civil right to free speech. It doesn't mean you can threaten the president. It doesn't mean you can scream fire in a crowded theater. We covered an episode on this. You can't go around slandering people. There are limits to freedoms, and she is suffering one of them. And ironically, she's suffering in the way that Republicans and conservatives believe people should suffer for consequences at the hands of a private business refusing service.
Yep.
Yeah, because private businesses get to say who they serve and who they do not.
Yep.
Which is why I have trouble finding any feelings of empathy for her, because it's like, no, you've championed for this very thing. Anytime there was a gay wedding cake that needed to be baked. Yeah, no, anytime that there was a baker that was denying service to a gay couple for a wedding cake, she was one of the ones championing it, saying, private industry. They only give, but as we've said multiple times, they only give a shit when it doesn't affect them. The moment it affects them, suddenly they're the victims. Suddenly this is an atrocity, because they don't give a damn about private businesses so long as those private businesses let them do whatever they want and oppress everybody they don't like.
100%.
Well, and this is Karen behavior at its best.
Yep.
Yeah.
It is absolutely that self-entitled Karen behavior of, you have to do what I say because I'm important.
Yep.
No, you're self-important, and no, we don't have to do what you say. And you can go get your COVID test at the city hall or wherever the hell it is, out of some back alley that's spotty fucking work, and just like every other underserved.
No, I don't think you should be allowed access to that. And again, this isn't just, I think you should be able to deny access to people you don't like, because I'm actually against the idea that cake makers can deny based on sexual identity. And the reason why I say this is because it's actually constitutionally protected. But what I'm saying is, I don't believe this is because she sucks as a person. It's because she's a white nationalist. I don't think anyone should be denied because they're Republican or because they're conservative or because they have a religion I don't like or a view I don't like. No, none of that. They all deserve absolute service. If you're a white nationalist, the only thing I want to see you at is the gallows.
Or a white nationalist bootlicker, because really at that point there's no difference.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing. You're whether you are part of that system or you uphold it, it's the same thing. You're a white nationalist. This isn't.
But I will say this too, like, I get the opposing view, and that's what Chris was opening this with, is what kind of started this debate internally. And I'll give shout outs in the middle of this too. This is to Basehead Faye and to TD Gamer. We were having this conversation with them. Basehead Faye was just kind of like on the fence about it, because she really was struggling with it because of the reasons we just listed. TD Gamer is more on the side of, like, if we're going to espouse the belief that nobody should be discriminated against, we need to apply that to even people that we hate. And you know what? I don't agree with the take in this context, but I respect it. And that's what I will say. It's like, if you have that take, I think you're wrong to have it. I think there are instances where it's okay to change your mind about a take, because contextually this situation is different, as Chris was pointing out. But it's also one of those things where I'm not going to like lambast somebody for having that view, because we need people like that.
Well, here's the thing: it's their hearts in the right place. I disagree with TD Gamer and Base Faye on this one. Again, I say fucking hanger high, but I don't have a problem with their viewpoint, because their viewpoint is coming from, I don't want civil rights eroded, and I want people to be cared for in an unbiased fashion, and I agree with those principles. Candace Owens is an exception for me, and again, just like we have exceptions to all of these things, I believe she qualifies as one. But I won't lambast people who disagree with me, because again, they're on the side of empathy, unlike the right wingers.
100%. So, but it was an interesting conversation. That's why we wanted to bring it here today, because it fit in nicely with kind of what we're talking about today. And
we should put a poll up on Twitter asking about the Candace Owens issue, where people stand on this one.
It's good.
I'm pretty sure I'll be in the minority, but it'll be a fun conversation.
I'll drop it Monday afternoon when this episode drops.
Sounds good. So everyone look for that on our Twitter. Now, by the way, everybody, we were actually going to have a nice long episode about Afghanistan for you, and that'll be coming next week. I just didn't have it in me to prepare a history lecture, so next week will be there, I promise. But this is just as juicy, if not better. Everyone has been checking out what's been going on in southern Gilead, also known as Texas.
Oh, man, they are really trying to beat out Florida for shittiest state in the union, aren't they?
They're trying to beat out fiction. Like, holy shit. So for anyone who has not been keeping up on this, like the news real junkies that we are, what happened is Texas passed a law. It's known as SB 8, and what
it was signed in. Yeah, it was signed into.
It was signed into law. Yes.
Yeah, into law by the governor.
Yes. Yep. And what it does is it is an abortion ban, and it bans abortions after 6 weeks. And the problem with this 6 weeks, now you're going to be like, all right, well, it's a little early, but whatever, who cares? It's that that's before most people even know they're pregnant, right? 6 weeks into a pregnancy is often so soon after a pregnant person misses their first menstrual period. Like, usually by the time someone's like, whoa, I haven't, it's a month and a half. You're literally 2 weeks late. If you're 2 weeks late, you've gone too far.
Yeah, what it says specifically is that before that they ban abortion after when the first heartbeat can be heard, which occurs generally around 6 weeks.
Yes. And there's a whole bunch of stuff where they have to make women listen to it and sign. There's a whole bunch of crap. But one of the big things with this one is, as usual, as per Republican evil, there's no exceptions for rape and incest.
Nope, none at all.
Yeah, so a 12-year-old raped by her father must have the baby, because that's what Texas Jesus likes. He likes that shit. He's super.
Well, yeah, he likes little girls having to birth their own little brother or sister.
Texas Jesus likes GM, Ford, no abortions, teen rape, and beer.
And when that girl is disowned by her parents for being deflowered by a man, and she's forced to go on welfare and raise a baby on her alone, at that point, the Republicans won't give a shit what happens to her. And,
too bad, so sad. Good luck.
Pull herself up by her bootstraps and get a job.
One of the things about this law, okay, is that it violates a Supreme Court edict as well. Okay, this isn't just this is shitty and wrong. Okay, this actually goes against federal law. And that's in Planned Parenthood versus Casey. It's a 1982 ruling. And basically what it does is, the quote on it is that it protects, quote, the right of women to choose to have an abortion before viability and to obtain it without undue interference from the state. Now, the court replaced the strict scrutiny standard of review, which is what Roe v. Wade actually required, and they replaced it with the undue burden verbiage, right? Or it's called the undue burden standard. And under that, abortion restrictions are unconstitutional when they're enacted, and this is the quote, when they're enacted for the purpose or effect of placing a substantial obstacle in the path of a woman seeking an abortion of a non-viable fetus. Non-viable is, a fetus that can't live outside the mother. That's a problem. That's a big one. It's because we actually have a law that is already in violation of the Supreme Court. You would think the Supreme Court would take issue with this.
Nope. They refuse to hear it.
They refuse to hear the emergency block on it, and they'll refuse to hear the cases that come to it.
They did, but they did it for a very specific reason. It's because it's actually not the state that is the actor in this.
Oh no, we're going to go there.
It's your community members. It's
That is
other women.
absolutely the reason they gave for not hearing it, and I don't believe it for anything. It's bullshit. It's horseshit. They did it deliberately so that the law would stay in effect.
Yeah, under the guise of that is the reason.
But it's intentional, right? So let's say you were someone who wanted to fight this in court, right? Whether you're the woman or you're the father or you're anyone, if you think something violates the Constitution or federal law, if you were to raise a constitutional challenge to any state law, it doesn't have to be abortion, it could be anything, you would sue the state officer that's charged with enforcing the law, right? And you'd get a court order preventing it from being enforced. So let's say Texas passed a law requiring the state medical board to strip abortion providers of their medical licenses, right? Anyone affected could sue the medical board, and that medical board would be prevented from doing it. That's how that works. If a state passed a law requiring all state cops to blockade abortion clinics, right, someone could sue the chief of the state police, and then they would be blocked from doing that. And that's how this is supposed to go. That's how fighting federal law is supposed to work. That's a good thing. But what makes SB 8 such a ridiculous law is that it doesn't allow any state official to enforce it. This is what the Reverend was talking about here, is the statute provides, and this is the quote, that it shall be enforced exclusively, which means not just it's allowed to, this is the only way, guys, you can enforce this. Exclusive, meaning the only way, through private civil actions. Under that law, any person other than, I'm quoting it here, I'm not surmising it, any person other than an officer or employee of a state or local governmental entity in this state may bring a private lawsuit against anyone who performs an abortion after the 6th week of pregnancy, or against anyone who knowingly engages in conduct that aids or abets the performance or inducement of an abortion. Plaintiffs who prevail in such suit shall receive at least $10,000 from the defendant. So...
And attorney's fees, by the way. That's in addition to attorney's fees.
By the way, this is harsher than rape laws. Like, we actually have an abortion law that's worse. Like, a woman who's raped and faces an abortion from it faces a worse penalty than the person who raped her and caused the pregnancy.
Let's go over exactly how this works, though. So if I were a female and I lived in the state of Texas, and Matt was my doctor, and Chris was an additional concerned citizen, and I got pregnant, and it was the 7th week,
I would then file a lawsuit against you. That's how this is enforced.
File a lawsuit directly against me with the courts, right?
Not that I'm involved. I'm somebody's neighbor or a witness or whatever. I simply came to my attention. You're just the person that saw
me going into the abortion clinic. Just a concerned citizen.
Yeah. And
they don't actually have to provide any real evidence.
Nope, none.
That I was even pregnant.
Nope.
Because
none whatsoever. The lawsuit gets filed.
The law, as far as I understood it, doesn't actually require medical records.
And there's even a state-run tip line where you can turn people in and leave anonymous tips, and private parties will help you file these lawsuits. And what we're looking at here is this is not rule of law. This is more insidious than that. They're bringing back the lynch mob.
Yep.
That is what this is. This is a slave patrol lynch mob. They are not only saying that citizens are able to take the law into their own hands on this one, they're saying only the citizenry can prosecute civilly.
Well, and the thing is they've taken it from a criminal act and turned it into a civil matter between two people, and are enacting extremely harsh punishments in terms of cash.
Which flies in the face of the entire civil suit to begin with, because the point of a civil suit is to show that you have been damaged. In any lawsuit, if you're suing someone, you can't sue someone because you don't like their face. You have to sue them because they did something to you. They stole something, they damaged your property, they harmed you, they did something, and you have to prove damages in a lawsuit. In this one, you don't. The state has just decided that that they're in violation of law, and for some reason, being completely undamaged, you can file a civil suit against someone. You can take money from them for tattling.
Yep.
No different than slave patrols enforcing lynch mobs. This is exactly the same thing. This is what the Klan did, guys.
Who wants to tell me about how we can fight it, or how women in Texas can fight it?
I have different ideas. My personal one is through killing people that do this, but
No.
most people wouldn't want to do that. There are absolute legal ways to do this. Actually, the ACLU is coming up with a whole bunch of different ones, and people are talking about refusing to give information due to HIPAA. But the Satanic Temple has actually given the just desserts more than I've ever heard. Matt was actually the one who was telling me about it.
Yeah.
This is absolutely delicious. Chef's kiss. One more reason why you should all love the Satanic Temple. Praise be to Satan.
Hail Satan.
Exactly. So, due to the Republicans constantly fisting these religious freedom laws down everyone's throats, the Satanic Temple, which is a recognized religion, now has grounds to sue in order for them to be able to get access to these abortion pills on the grounds of religious freedom, because it is against their religion to not get to be denied an abortion.
And so they can actually argue this in court.
Yep.
As long as the person can show that they're a member of the Satanic Temple. And I'm going to guess that it's probably not a very hard thing to become a member.
Nope, not hard at all. Not even a little bit. And here's the best part, guys. There's precedent for this. All the people that have been denying homosexuals access to cakes, flowers, wedding supplies, all of their legal battles have been won on these exact same grounds. There is no legal precedent for denying it, and there's every legal precedent for going through. You can't fight it. And I actually, the reason this is so delicious to me is like, and why I love the Satanic Temple for this stuff is they are taking all this religious bullshit that the right has been just cramming down our throats for years and shoving it right back in their face. Because what the right really wants is for a very specific religion to be able to do whatever the fuck it wants.
They want a theocracy.
Absolutely. Yeah. They want a Christian theocracy.
Poor right wants a theocracy. The wealthy right wants an... Anyway, the point is, you're right. Yeah. And that is the delicious part, Matt, because the only way to fight it is for them to have to declare that religious law can't be used legally.
Yep.
Right.
And then they're fucked because this was their one avenue to be able to discriminate. This is how all their discrimination cases are being won, is through this religious freedom bullshit. So it's basically, you don't get to have your cake and eat it too, fuckers.
Yep, and this is why leftists are better than liberals, because the leftist response is to use the Satanic Temple to fuck them right in the same asshole they've been using against the country, whereas liberals they have no interest in supporting this. They will not talk about it whatsoever. All they will do is tell people to push contraception, and they want Joe Biden to pack the Supreme Court, which is dangerous.
Ugh.
And
it sets such a dangerous precedent, and I don't want to see it, because it's just gonna fuck us in the long run.
And I know the argument. Well, the argument against that is that the Republicans don't care about precedent either, and that they violate that constantly, and they trash social norms. So why should we too? And just like we were talking earlier, I do understand getting dirty. I hope Candace Owens dies. She's a bad person who has caused death and misery, and the world would be better without her. However, there are things that will actually killing Candace Owens simply costs you a little black mark on your morals.
Mm-hmm.
It still makes the world a better place. Yep. Packing the Supreme Court may help you in the short run, but it makes the world a worse place, because if you think for 1 second that the Republicans are not going to put 782 Supreme Court justices on the bench after Joe Biden puts 10 more, you're out of your fucking mind.
Yeah. Well, and that's the problem with liberals, is they always forget this one simple fact. Democrats suck at this.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know how to do this. They never want to do this. It's always this, building bridges bullshit. And so when they do go down that route, they're not prepared for they tear down all these walls, tear down all this red tape, and they open the floodgates so that whatever they do, Republicans, as soon as they get power, will bring it back 15,000 fold.
Well, did you hear Joe Biden's quote on this one? Joe Biden was quoted last week. You can look it up. That if you don't want to work with, he literally said, if you don't want to work with Republicans, then what are you doing here? Go home or start a real physical revolution.
Well, that's you go,
what
folks.
Joe Biden fucking said.
There you go.
And that's where the liberals are at, is that, nope, we will work with these guys no matter what. But then they want to pack the courts. And it's like, you're literally just playing into their hands. Because, yes, was one of the most dangerous things that Trump did, besides making Nazis not scared anymore, was the total ignoring of norms of the office? Absolutely. But the answer to that is not to do it yourself. The answer is to fucking grow a pair and
Mhm.
fight it when it happens instead of saying,
Yeah.
oh man, we just better vote blue in 2 years.
Yeah.
Like, no, actually stop it, not join in when it's your turn. And this is the failure of reform and liberal leadership, is they just want to hug it out with the GOP, and the GOP is not interested in hugging shit out.
Yeah.
No.
Meanwhile, though, I do want to go back to one thing about the abortion thing. Big ups to millennials and Gen Z from TikTok. Do you guys hear what they did?
Yes. Oh, the Shrek porn. It's wonderful.
I have not seen this.
I tried sending a tip in. The website has now been closed.
They're down. Yeah. Okay. And I'm going to get into that. So just so everyone knows. So there was a big TikTok push. So there's a website that Texas has created that people can use to report the incidents that Kay was talking about. So if you want to report somebody you think is getting abortion, there's this convenient little website that they decided to launch that people could just go in and fill in this information. Well, TikTokers found it and started flooding it with Shrek porn, bullshit claims, basically doing everything they could
Just
to
spamming
bring
the
it
shit out of
just so that even if there was a legitimate report, there would be literally no way to find it through all the bullshit. It was amazing. And then it was 4 hours ago that this was reported. GoDaddy, which was the hosting site, has now cited them as violating their terms of service and told them they have 24 hours to find a new hosting site.
Yep.
Now, but I will say this to those of you listening,
awesome.
this isn't the end. This is one big push and one protest. This needs to go on. As long as there's a site that exists, it needs to be flooded continuously. I will
DDoS
try
attacks. Like, we need hackers to get it on.
Yeah,
this.
we just need them to continuous.
Yeah, everybody that can do
you
your
know,
part.
continually attack.
I try to do the same thing as you, Chris. I try to do it myself, and that's how I found out about GoDaddy.
Once it gets bad, once we start getting DDoS attacks, what's going to happen? We're literally going to have the government actually crack down. We're going to have Joe Biden and people like them. We're going to have Democratic lawmakers come after people who are doing this because it violates the rule of law. We don't have to agree with it, but we got to work with these guys. That's the shit we're dealing with right now.
Yep.
So again, fuck the Democrats. They're good for nothing. They will not stop this kind of thing. Again, the Texas voter ID law. What did they do? They ran away to the state and ran to DC. All you did was, again, I'm not even a big fan of democracy, but all you did was shoot democracy in the face. If you really want to put something through, resign.
Yep.
That would be an actual show. Don't just run away for 3 weeks and then come home. That's nothing. It's a bullshit virtue signaling. It doesn't actually do anything, and it just appeals to your voter base. And so, therefore, no, they're capitalizing on this shit.
And for those of you that say, well, then there'd be no one to stop this. Well, you're not fucking stopping it now. So at least you're showing solidarity. Like, it's going to get through regardless.
At least
don't
the record
participate.
books show that the only way that the opposition handled it was to completely resign in disgust and refuse to participate in it. This needs to be fought no matter what. And this needs to be fought with Shrek porn and eventually guillotines. Not hugging it out. Not Joe Biden, cheese and crackers, and no malarkey, and not capitulating whatsoever. This is absolute garbage. Our Supreme Court has failed us. Our federal government has failed us, and we need an overhaul of the system. And I don't know what is going to reach people who think we can vote our way out of this more than this law right here, because every branch of government has failed us. The legislative has pushed this through. The judicial has given it the green light, and the executive doesn't want to talk about it. What's left, guys? Nothing. So, anyway, much like ivermectin, we should stop beating this dead horse. And let's talk about the mailbag, Matt.
How's your sack doing, Matt?
I don't know if that was the worst transition ever or the best transition ever, but damn it all, let's run with it. So we got two, and I apologize, everyone. I was out last week. I got sick, didn't have COVID, but what I got hit me like a ton of bricks. So thank you, Chris and Kay, for an excellent sex worker podcast without me. 100% great. I thought
we didn't do that alone.
Yeah. No. Oh yes. Special thanks, Casper Quartz, for being one of the best guests we've had on in a long time. Her and the interview with Joel Ventresca, those two best interviews I think we've had, guys. So give yourself a round of applause. Yeah.
And I'm really glad we didn't screw those up. I mean, can you imagine us just running over to Joel Ventresca's house and whipping him and throwing dollars at him? And he's just sitting there crying. It's like, I went to Stanford. Oh man,
That would have made for an awkward interview.
So what's happened in the world, buddy?
Needless to say, so there is a bit of a backup, so I do apologize. We're getting a little behind, so I wanted to start with some of the earlier ones. The two I've got for you today are actually going back to our communism socialism episode. As I pretty much expected, we got quite a few questions on that. The first one I want to hit is from our buddy Eric, aka Stoffer. He had a question for you, Chris. He said he loved the communism social episode. Said that Chris had mentioned different types of communism: Stalinism, Maoism, Marxism, Trotskyism, etc. He wants to know if you can explain a little bit about those variations and which one he most agrees with. You most agree with.
Sure. So yeah, that was actually going to be something we were planning on going into the episode. It just ran forever because, mom and dad had to fight. That's what Kay and I do. So
Yep.
Kay won because he's prettier. But
It's true. Thank you. Although your beard is looking very nice, just to let you know.
Thank you. Yeah. It's the dinosaur on a microphone. It helps a lot.
Good point.
So yeah, there's again, and this is too much to go into on a mailbag question. We could do an entire episode just on these differences, but there's kind of a few different chunks. You have the Marxism. You have the Marxists and Marxism, which I definitely subscribe to. That's the OG Karl Marx Communist Manifesto. Very pro-worker, very anti-capitalist.
Really? I thought you were a Leninist.
I am too. I used to be. I've actually moved on. I think Lenin was great. He's still a hero of mine. I don't know if Leninism is applicable to the world today. I think Leninism was really good for turn of the century. In the 20th century, but at this point, it's just a little behind the times. Leninism requires most people to be steel workers and farmers, and that's just not where we're at anymore. And so you have your Marxism, which again, read the Communist Manifesto, and you got that. Then you've got Leninism, which again, these are very short reads, guys. Honestly, you can find this stuff for free online. There's a book called State and Revolution. It's actually written by Vladimir Lenin. It's a short read, guys. It's like 30 fucking pages. It's nothing. It's a really long essay, and it's really, really good. It really breaks down a lot of Leninism. I like Leninism because it was anti-racism. It was pro-woman. It was anti-Semitism. Lenin was constantly asked, like, what do we do about the Jews? And he's like, sounds like they're workers to me. Why don't you shut the fuck up? Lenin was great about that shit. Lenin is actually probably the most progressive women's rights advocates the Soviet Union ever had. The Soviet Union was the first nation in the world to make marital rape illegal. Beat us by over 60 years. They were the first giant Western nation to have women in their Congress and in massive federal areas of power. They launched the first woman into space. So there are several women who hold some of the most powerful seats in their government to this day. So again, not that Russia is perfect by any means. In fact, there's a lot of misogynistic issues that Russia still goes through, especially once the mob took over in the 90s. But Leninism is very pro-woman. It's very anti-racism that I like. Trotskyism is another one. A lot of American communists tend to either fall into Maoism or Trotskyism. It's not for me. Because Trotsky wasn't quite the hero a lot of people break him out to be, but he got martyred by Stalin, and so he gets elevated quite a bit, like a red-colored Jesus.
He gets that reputation of like he would have done it better, right?
Yeah, Trotsky had this reputation. Here's the thing: Trotsky would have done a much better job than Stalin. Abso-fucking-lutely. Trotsky actually probably would have prevented the Holodomor famine. Trotsky would have been far more effective against Hitler. Trotsky would have done a lot of things better, but Trotsky still would have brought along the horrors of Stalin assassinations. Trotsky very much believed in the Gulag and the secret police, and Trotsky was workers have the rights, but also we should shoot people if they don't want to work hard enough. And so Trotsky was, again, he's kind of this halfway between, like, he has more elevated views than Stalin. He's more in terms of Lenin with his social development, but he's too much like Stalin that he's an evil strongman. Then you have Stalinism, which is anybody who doesn't like me or a mustache gets the Gulag and gets shot in a firing squad. So fuck Stalin. I don't like him. I don't like anyone who's a Stalinist. And if you're a Stalinist, you're basically just either someone who doesn't understand what Stalinism is,
or you're a monster.
Yeah. Or you're a sociopath.
I started looking into the communist Reddit after you showed us those pics of that debate you were having.
Mm-hmm.
God, are Stalinists just a bag of fuck? Like, and Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and Stalinists are why anybody like me, who's actually pro-heavy state influence, get called tankies, because that's where it really comes to. Stalinists are the ones who make it look bad for anyone who believes in the state authority. So anyway, then we're rounding out to the people I really like. You've got good old Mao. In fact, if you want to look at where socialism and communism started getting footholds in the United States, like during the Vietnam War era, you would have found every Black Panther was a Maoist. It was a Maoist organization. A lot of people rebelling against the Vietnam War carried what was called Mao's Little Red Book, which, again, you could find that online. Look up Mao's Little Red Book. There's a lot of good shit in it. Mao was a son of a farmer. He was a regular dude. He became a military leader. He rose through the ranks from nothing to general, and then he was finally like, hey, how come everyone's starving and dying all the time? Maybe landlords are a bad idea. And he ran through and, took over the country and killed them and shoved everyone left into Taiwan and created a brand new state and desperately tried to be friends with Stalin. Stalin wanted nothing to do with Mao, which is actually why Russia and China always never agreed, because Stalin was a racist and a piece of shit. But Mao was pretty awesome. He did some things wrong. He created his own famine because he basically surrounded himself with yes men, unfortunately, and took their advice on things like agriculture and science and industry, and they were very wrong. But he admitted it, unlike Stalin. Instead of having them all killed, he actually resigned, and he didn't come back to office for like another 10 years or something like that. And he gave a shit. He wasn't perfect, but he actually gave a damn. So I'm a big fan of Mao, and he had some really good ideas about basically people shouldn't own private land. It shouldn't just be industry. And that's where you see communism shift away from steel workers and that kind of thing, that workers were farmers too. And he was trying to elevate an entire peasantry class, which is actually why you see things now in China where they're like, oh, there's these cities that have been built that no one can even live in yet. And it's like, yes, because he's getting people working and getting food in their belly and getting work done and building cities, because the population is exploding and they will be spilling into those cities. And he's trying to keep industry running because Xi Jinping, not a great guy, but he's not a fucking idiot, and he knows things are changing globally and ecologically, and he knows they're going to have to shift to a green energy source very soon, and so he's literally trying to build an infrastructure in his country so they can do that and still keep up with us, because the United States is a big fan of building freeways and power plants and then telling everyone else, no, they can't do that.
Yeah. But
anyway,
which is another reason why they're going to surpass us when it comes to green technology.
But then you have your newer wave of communism, which is where you have people like Ho Chi Minh. Ho Chi Minh was a goddamn genius. I love Ho Chi Minh. Ho Chi Minh, French-educated Vietnamese dude, comes back. Ho Chi Minh was like Jethro Tull. Like, that was like his 17th name he went under, and that's the one that stuck because everyone's trying to kill him. And yeah, he pushed the French out of Vietnam, fought the French, fought the Chinese, fought the Americans, fought the Cambodians. Like, Ho Chi Minh couldn't be fucking stopped, and he absolutely did it for all the right reasons, and Vietnam flourished because of the revolution that Ho Chi Minh brought, and still does to this day. They're the ones who went into Cambodia and stopped a genocide because we didn't give a shit. Right after they fought us, they literally marched into Cambodia and stopped Pol Pot. And the United States didn't give a shit. There's a genocide going on. We couldn't be bothered. That wasn't our affair, but stopping them from being communist apparently was. So Ho Chi Minh, great dude. Even better, my favorite communist of all time, Thomas Sankara, guy who led a revolution in Burkina Faso, changed the name to that. It means like the people who can't be corrupted or the incorruptible people or something like that. And literally pushed the French out of the country, refused to participate in world banking, and in that time completely elevated the status of women, completely ecologically changed the country, planted trees everywhere, revolutionized farming, revolutionized industry, dropped infant mortality rates, built schools, built hospitals. I mean, dude took every single piece of influence and money he had from the state and used 100% of it to better the people. And for that, the French finally came in, had him assassinated, put in a puppet governor. But that's Thomas Sankara, and he's kind of that newer age communist where it's not about adhering to the worker. It's the classism has changed because Marx didn't know about this stuff. There wasn't this American Jeff Bezos imperialism going on then. It wasn't like that. There was a handful of robber barons, and they exploited locally, and that was it. And so they were focused on empowering regular workers to rise up against their exploiters. Well, that has grown global now. That's a much bigger fight. It's a much bigger class struggle. And so now what you see is it's not about organizing steelworkers. It's about organizing nations against imperialist oppressors and colonizing agencies that seek to rob your nation of its military, its resources, and bleed it dry. People like Elon Musk are coming for your nation's minerals. But yeah, it's about organizing your nation and resisting as a whole and as a people against imperialism and colonization. People like Elon Musk are coming to rape your country for minerals and gems and chop off children's hands to do it. That's the problem now. It's not some factory boss The factory boss has a boss and he's in a different country and he's running a bank, and that's your enemy. And that's kind of that neo-communism that's come around. The fight has moved. The class struggle exists. The goalposts have changed. That is the best I can give you with no research, off the cuff, in less than 5 minutes.
That was pretty good. Not bad.
And that was well over 5 minutes.
Let him have this one.
That's what she said. No, she didn't.
All right. Well, thank you, Eric. I appreciate it, brother. As always, you bring good questions to the conversation, so I always appreciate that. The next one is from another listener, Alex, also on communism, socialism. This one's a little bit longer. So he's referencing you again, Chris. He says, Chris states that violence is required to achieve socialism and communism. And he phrases it as if it's on the pro-socialism side to, unfortunately, be the ones to do it. But all of the examples he gives of violence is violence being caused by the side that is resisting the social change. Also, while it may be possible to ask Jeff Bezos to give up his empire, his company may certainly one day be broken up by anti-monopoly laws. If I remember correctly, the fire department used to be a collection of private businesses and has since been nationalized, so there is a precedent of private industries being socialized. Finally, I think Chris said the government has to be authoritarian for socialism, communism to work. I believe the same argument can be made for capitalism. The problem we have in this country is that our politicians have nearly all been bought off by big business, which may be the root cause for all of the late-stage capitalism issues we're having. If we had a government that had authority over these corporations to allow them to make profits, as long as it's not at the expense of the citizens suffering, that could be a win for both workers and business owners without necessarily going full socialism or communism. Okay, feel free to tell me how wrong I am.
Okay, I'll tell you how wrong you are. So let's have those in reverse order. So first of all, the idea that, well, fire department used to be private, well, so were police. And that took a whole lot of death and destruction to change that. That required a lot of assassinations and cops murdering people in the streets who were organizing unions. We don't live in that world anymore. Sure, is there a precedent for breakups? Yeah, look what happened to AT&T. Look at the antitrust lawsuits that Theodore Roosevelt brought through. That was a different world. That was a world without computers. That was a world without globalized trade. The idea that now the government can just step in and say, okay, Amazon, time to break up. It doesn't work that way anymore, because when that was possible, Carnegie Steel didn't own the Senate. And they weren't richer than the Senate. Amazon is. And so we have reached a stage of hyper-capitalism, which kind of brings us to the other point that you made. It was kind of, you answered your own question. You said, like, I think that we can have a hybrid of socialism, capitalism. The only reason why I can't have that is because capitalism. It's like, yeah, capitalism has made that impossible. The point of capitalism is to destroy your competition and to take over any industry and governmental structure you can in order to achieve as much profit as possible. Bring down operating costs, expand profit and sales. That is the point of capitalism. And if it pays you and behooves you to take over the government to increase your profit margin, that is what you do. A corporation does not exist for patriotism or feel goods. They exist to generate profit and capital, and that is their only goal. Why would they do anything different? You're asking, it's like, I just don't understand why cancer cells don't stop overproducing and just give us dopamine. It's like, no, they have one job. They overproduce and die. That's it. Or they don't die. And you're expecting a organization that has one function and one function only to ignore that single function. So yes, the reason why you can't have a capitalism-socialism hybrid is because that requires capitalism. And capitalism doesn't allow itself to be hybrid with anything. These hybrids that you see in other countries and like European nations, it's not going to last. That will change. Look, Germany is already crushing that around the EU right now. Ask Greece about how that hybrid model is working for them. Not so well. And there will be times where the people will let this change happen and will force it through, because people like the Germans and the French and the Swedes and all these other people, they have a more advanced and mature and educated culture than Americans do, which is why we have to learn lessons with a frying pan, and they're able to actually legislate sanity. It won't last as long as they keep a capitalist structure. Now, if in this window, this short window they have right now where they do have a hybrid system, they're able to beat back capitalism and eradicate it from their nations in the next century, then they'll win. But if they don't, capitalism will bring them to the same knees we have here. Capitalism's job is to crush any kind of socialism. That's why it exists. It's to generate capital at any cost. And you cannot have a social safety net, and you cannot allow yourself to be broken up if you want to generate as much revenue as possible. So yes, we absolutely have a historical precedent for it happening in the past. Unfortunately, we now have computers and telephones and the internet, and corporations no longer adhere to a nation. Back, 100 years ago, when corporations felt the need to adhere themselves to a nation's laws, that worked. It worked really well. But now they're international. It doesn't exist anymore. That ability for Amazon to give a shit about American legislation doesn't matter. All they have to do is move their corporate headquarters outside the United States, and boom, done. Amazon now exists as a company in Guam.
And you know what? And I feel for Alex, because I feel like anybody that's on this like journey of progression from liberal to further left, they get to this point eventually. I was there too, where it was this idea of just like, well, why can't we just have some sort of hybrid where profits are allowed and we can also have all these great socialist programs? And the more you start, the older you get, the more you see like all the things we've seen in the last few years with our own government and big business just fucking people over left and right. And the more you learn about how capitalism works, the more you start to realize that they really are incompatible philosophies. It's like Chris was saying. I do think that eventually it's going to swing one way or the other for these other countries too. I think some of them are going more socialist as the time goes on because the people realize these are good programs and they work. Look at Sweden and Switzerland and countries like that, man. Like, I mean, there is a precedent for them having success, but you can't, like, I don't know how you're going to swing. Once you reach a certain point, I don't know how you swing back again. They've been going in the direction, I think, of more socialists as time goes by, which is why Chris is saying, like, if they embrace it, which I hope they will, how do you get all these great protections for the people and lift everybody else up and then go back to a system that inherently says some people can have more than others? Like, there's no way you can do that. Like, and that's where I think the biggest flaw comes in is when you're a socialist or communist, it's about everyone gets lifted up together. When you're capitalist, it's no, some people have the most money and there's poor people that suffer and die. And that's a good thing because for reasons.
How else am I going to have the most money?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And that's why that doesn't work.
Yeah.
All right. What do we got next?
No, that was it. I don't want to take us any much longer than we have to be, but I thought those were really good questions.
I agree. And thank you guys for posting them to us. Even if I disagree with you, I think the reason I think you're wrong is because I think you're hopeful and I think you want things to be good. That's the difference. I will happily talk to you any day of the week. I don't hate you at all for disagreeing because you want people to not suffer. You want good to prevail, and that is a noble desire. You are not hoping for others to suffer. You are not a conservative. That's the difference.
And I would just go on to say that I think you're on a journey that I myself have gone through. And I'm sure Chris at one time went through it. I think Kay is actually on that journey as well, although we haven't talked about it as much, but based on some of his opinions, I think he's on that path as well. Eventually you get to the point that you realize there are certain ideologies that there is no middle ground. There is no room for compromise.
And that journey is going to happen to a lot of people because literally American white nationalism and fascism is on the rise. Yep. Like, it's not a journey anyone wants to do, but it's kind of like climate change and global warming. As it becomes more dire and the evil side becomes louder and more oppressive to you being able to survive, suddenly it's like, okay, I can't really ignore this anymore and hope for the best anymore because we're all going to die. And I think the journeys that all three of us are on are what a lot of Americans are going through.
I would agree.
That's going to wrap us up for today. Thanks for joining us on this one. Next week, I promise I'll have more of a voice and a longevity for breathing, and I will give you a nice boring history lecture that you can put on before you go to bed. And we will talk about Afghanistan, not just Joe Biden and pulling out. We're going to talk about Mujahideen. We're going to talk about the Russians. We're going to talk about Ronald fucking burn in hell Reagan. We're going to talk about all kinds of shit that leads up to American imperialism. And we are reaping what we've sowed. And Kay, edit that, please. And it's going to be a good one. We haven't prepared it all. Just that's where I plan on taking it. I'm sure Matt and Kay are going to bring beautiful topics as well to it. And settle in. Until then, please take care of yourselves. Don't forget to go online and hail Satan and take care of each other because the revolution is you.